So the yamas and niyamas are restraints and lifestyle observances. Restraints which will ultimately lead to unhappiness, and observe and make us do something that will ultimately create well-being and fulfillment in our life. The first is ahimsa. Ahimsa means non-violence, and non-violence is not only by not harming someone physically, but it starts in the thoughts and in our words, and not only in action. It starts by being nice to ourselves, by loving ourselves, by being kind to ourselves, and letting go of all the hostility and harming to ourselves and others. Because it always starts with ourselves. When we're able to be kind and loving to ourselves, then this can ripple over to others. Just as when we throw a pebble into the water, the ripples start close and then ripple further. And it's the same with ahimsa and self-love in that sense. We need to be kind to ourselves first, and then from there it can reach vast, vast distances. So you want to start replacing those negative emotions with positive ones. And we're trying to meet every challenge in life with equanimity, peace, kindness, and openness. This is ahimsa. The second of the yamas is satya. Satya is truthfulness, and not only in word, but also in thought and action. Not trying to deceive ourselves, not trying to do something that is not according to our true nature. Every time we speak, think, or act, we should do this in support of the higher truth. Not the ego truth, not the lower self, supporting the higher self. So we don't try to act in petty ways like gossip, or actually trying to hurt ourselves with others with words, which again comes back to the part of ahimsa. If we don't do this, this will always feed into a darker side of ourselves, and it will grow. And eventually will create and accumulate negative karma that prevents us from continuing our spiritual journey. Satya, truthfulness. The third is asteya. It's non-stealing. So basically it refers to that we should not take anything that is not freely offered. And this really goes beyond the physical things. It can be not taking away someone's time, someone's energy, or even someone's happiness in life. It's really important to understand that it's not only the first thing that we think about with stealing, for example. It's very subtle. And these yamas and niyamas can always be addressed to different levels. So, by not stealing, we're again not feeding into the dark side of ourselves, and have trust that the good will come to us by itself. It's a bit of a surrender. Something that we're going to come into later as well, the Ishvara Pranidhana. It's a surrendering, it's a trusting that we don't need to grasp and hold on to something. Good things will come into our lives by themselves. And at the same time, it's also an invitation of what we truly need in our life. Do we need to grasp and attach ourselves to something outside of ourselves, or are we already complete within? Asteya, non-stealing. Brahmacharya. Often confused as celibacy, sexual celibacy, which can be a part of it, but is not what it actually means. It actually means, or literally means, walking in the way of God. So we're trying to do everything with the perspective of God, with the perspective of the divine. And we do this in order to lose precious energy by misusing our senses. So it's a bit of controlling our senses and controlling ourselves by not wasting it with, for example, overeating, overly sexual behavior. These are all things that bring us pleasure, but only in the short run. In the long run, they will actually rob us of energy. So what it means that we should have a mindful relationship with our sensual pleasures. Pleasure is always short-lived and our senses are there for a reason, but like wild horses, we need to have control over our senses, otherwise we're set up for disaster. And on a more Western science level, we're actually training our higher brain centers, especially the prefrontal cortex, that which makes us human, what differentiates us from lower animal behavior. So Brahmacharya just invites us to have a proper energy management. Aparigraha, non-attachment or non-grasping. It frees us from this greed of endlessly wanting more. Probably all of us have heard about minimalism. It's all the craze these days. A lot of people have had crazy transformation in their happiness just by understanding that what our consumer society is trying to make us do is not leading to happiness. It will never lead to happiness. Grasping and attaching ourselves to something that is outside of ourselves is doomed to lead to unhappiness because it can always be taken away from us. So we never should attach ourselves to something outside of ourselves because it can always be taken away. As well as they only give us pleasure, and pleasure is never the same as true happiness and fulfillment. But further than those material things, it also invites us to disidentify from our ego and to our emotional attachments. To understand that we are not our attachments to other people, to ourselves, to our emotions. This is not us. This is just what our ego tries to attach itself to in order to appease itself, to give ourselves a false sense of happiness and of security. So aparigraha invites us to experience abundance without the need of outside circumstances. It shows us that everything we need is already within ourselves and that we don't need anything else. Aparigraha. The next part is saucha, which is physical, emotional, and mental hygiene. So it's not just to keep our body clean, but to keep our mind and our emotions clean. And emotional and mental hygiene is something that is very, very under-focused these days. We are very clean these days. We do shower every day and maybe even have taken that to the extreme, to the point where our body is ripped of important parts that it needs just for the reason of being too clean or just to be clean. So if we would divert a bit of effort that we use into physical cleanliness into mental and emotional cleanliness, we'd all be a lot happier and more fulfilled. Because it doesn't matter how clean we are on the outside. The outside is a reflection of the inside. And if we're not clean within, we can never be fully clean without. But it's also important not to get stuck on endless cleaning. Of course, it's important to be clean, but just as the physical aspect can be overdone, so can the emotional and mental aspect as well. It's just important to understand, and what Sausha is trying to invite us is to understand that the physical is always temporary, but the internal, our soul, this is what is prevailing forever. And focusing more on internal hygiene is very important. Santosha. Santosha can be translated into contentment or gratitude. It literally means the greatest happiness. And even science these days has shown that gratitude or contentment is one of the highest emotions next to love. It is impossible to feel negative emotions while carrying gratitude within your heart. And it invites us to accept life as it is. To not attach ourselves to different circumstances, but to be here in the present moment and accept life as it is right now. Because in the end, you will never be able to really find what you're trying to find when you're looking outside of yourself. If you give up the urge trying to change your external circumstances and feel contentment and gratitude with what is, then you're free. Then you can experience true happiness and true lasting fulfillment. But of course, this is also not an excuse to stop working on ourselves, to not wanting to grow or improve things in our life. But it comes from a different perspective. It comes from a perspective of understanding it's perfect as it is right now, but we can still improve. But it's not from a point of grasping or needing or the urge. It's just understanding that things can be better, but still being fully happy with how it is right now. And I argue that from this place we have a lot higher chance and a lot more power and force to get to our desired goals. So santosha, contentment, or gratitude. We're reaching the last three of the Niyamas now. And the first one of the last three is tapas, which can be translated into discipline. But a very nice quote that I found says, tapas is putting forth extraordinary effort toward changing one's behavior and inherent tendencies. So it tells us to first understand our limiting behavior and inherent tendencies that stop us from growing, and then really using self-discipline in order to burning those unwanted habits. To burn them away and then have the freedom, the clean slate of our driving force. And then replacing those old habits with new, better ones that lead us to more spiritual and personal growth. And then to really use this in order to better ourselves and better our practice. At the same time, we will see that having developed some kind of discipline will trickle over into other aspects of our life. It does not mean that just if we develop discipline in one aspect, that we have also developed discipline in another aspect. With real tapas, what it really tries to make you achieve is this underlying force that propels you forward. So it actually goes beyond discipline. And then you will really see this overarching effect. Because when you have discipline in your spiritual practice, in your yamas and niyamas, then you will get this overarching effect over your whole life, where life just becomes easier. You will literally feel how everything is coming a little bit easier from your hands. So tapas, discipline. The second last one, swadhyaya. Who am I? Self-study. Swadhyaya invites us to get to know yourself. First of all, to understand who we are not, that we're not this ego, that we're not this physical body, understand of who we are in this life, but then also see that we are more than that. See that we have this eternal side within us. And then try to live from this point. And really, it invites us to contemplate and reflect on our emotions, on our thinking, on our physical body, and to really incorporate all this into this understanding that we are beyond what the eyes can see. And this is actually really important for our spiritual journey as well. Because only when we really know ourselves, know our inherent tendencies, then we can better them. Then we can apply tapas. We can apply this discipline because we know what we personally need to do to improve. So this is why self-study and getting to know yourself is really important in the spiritual journey. But at the same time, it can also refer to self-study, to study by yourself. Don't rely on other teachers. Don't rely on someone telling you something, on guiding you on your way. Study for yourself. Take a book. Read what you're interested about. Take notes. Grow. Expand your knowledge. This is Swadhyaya, self-study. And finally, we reach Ishvara Pranidhana, which is often translated as surrender, but surrender in the sense of surrendering to the higher power. Surrendering our practice and surrendering ourselves with the trust that we're doing this for a higher power, for a higher self. So we're always dedicating everything to the highest self, which is God, to the highest self within us, which is a reflection and a part of God, of the divine. So we're offering everything to this bigger part, and always trying to act in accordance to this. Because it's easy to say, I surrender myself to the higher part, but then actually in your daily actions, really do that. Trust. Have trust that everything you do will at some point or is already there for your biggest benefit. And this is arguably something that is the most difficult for people, especially for us here in the West, to really surrender, to understand that there is something bigger than us and that everything we do does matter. And so you can call it God, you can call it the universe, it doesn't matter. Just surrender and trust to this higher power. Trust that there is a higher guidance for all of us. And then you will also see that this transforms your life and your practice. Things become less tense, less, oh my God, am I really going to make this? And no, things are going to happen in accordance to how they're supposed to happen. And if you have this mindset while approaching your things in your life, you will experience that everything will become a lot easier and a lot more fulfilling. So these are the 10 commandments, the Yamas and Niyamas, and they lay our stable foundation for our spiritual practice, for our sadhana, spiritual practice. And this is something that we can already start today, right now. Get yourself familiar with all these different aspects and try to incorporate them into your life. Namaste.